In this episode, we're going to guide you through the strategies to maximize your time in Europe on a tourist visa, allowing you to enjoy the experience of living in Europe for a full year or even more.
Hi there, we are Joel and Michelle, and we are the Wandering Hartz, and we're helping you live a more abundant life by traveling abroad.
This episode is part of our Nomadic Abundance podcast on YouTube and soon everywhere else. Check out the podcast playlist for more.
Today, we're going to be talking about how you can stay for 1 year or more in Europe on a tourist visa. We're also going to give you 3 different strategies in which you can do that. We're going to talk about some of the non-Schengen countries that you can actually stay, as well as how long you can stay in each. And we'll finally wrap it up with some tips as well.
So who is this video for? This is for full-time travelers like us, slow travelers, which we also do as well, traveling retirees, and US passport holders.
Now, first, we'll talk a little bit about visa types. As Michelle mentioned, we are going to be talking, again, just a tourist visa in this regard. So there's a lot of different visa schemes out there, as like retirement visas, nomad visas, and things like that. And they have like slightly different rules and things. So we're not going to be talking about those. Like I said, just the tourist visa, again, for US passport holders. Also, another important note as well, if you're like a remote worker and you're spending more than 180 days in a single country, you might be opening yourself up to some tax obligations or liabilities rather. So you'll definitely want to check on that on your own, consults or, looking at the digital nomad visas or what have you.
First thing to know about Europe is that it's comprised of Schengen and non-Schengen countries. So in order to stay in Europe for a year or more on a tourist visa, you kind of have to understand how the Schengen area is and how it works for you. As a US passport holder, we get a visa-free travel to 29 countries that make up the Schengen area in Europe. So in order to understand Schengen, just remember that it's borderless travel between member states. So it allows for free movement of travel and commerce without border checks. So just think of it as traveling in the States in the US and also in the provinces in Canada.
So one big thing you need to know traveling in Europe, especially to these Schengen area countries, is that we are limited to 90 out of 180 days in country at a time. So essentially what that means is that at the end of your 90 days, you'll need to leave the Schengen area to a non-Schengen country if you're staying in Europe, or you could go to any other, like back to your home state or home country if you'd like to as well. Now, once you're outside of the Schengen area, essentially your time resets on a rolling basis, starting 180 days after you first entered. So for instance, if you end up using up all 90 days in one go, you'll have to leave the Schengen area for the full 90 days before you can come back in again. Now we have a whole episode where you get a really deep dive all about the Schengen area and all that stuff that you can check out in the description. Now, since we are talking about traveling for a year or more inside of the whole of Europe, we're just going to assume that every time we travel into the Schengen Zone, that we're going to be using up those full 90 days at a time.
Let's go over 3 of the common strategies, starting with the simplest one if all you want to do is stay in Europe. And this is basically the easiest one if you're wanting to live in one place or you're a super slow traveler, and that is staying put. You can stay put in one of the 2 non-Schengen countries in Europe that US passport holders get 1 year of visa-free travel, and that is Albania and the country of Georgia.
So the next strategy is for people who want to spend more time in maybe multiple countries at a time. You can do this by balancing your travel between Schengen and also non-Schengen countries. Some call this the Schengen shuffle. Other people may call it maybe like the wagon wheel effect. Now, essentially what you're doing is you're rotating or shuffling between those Schengen and non-Schengen countries in order to just maximize your time overall in Europe.
Yeah, so at the end of your 90 days, you simply travel out of the Schengen area to a non-Schengen country like Montenegro or Bosnia, and then you can stay there for another 90 days while you're waiting for your Schengen basically to reset.
Now, this is the most common approach if you want to see and experience more than just like one country during your time in Europe. If you're like us, you might even just want to follow the sun and stay out of like the cold areas. Now, you do have several options to travel to Europe to non-Schengen countries, such as UK, Ireland, Balkans, Turkey, Georgia, and even Cyprus. We're going to go over a full list of all of these countries a little bit later, as well as how long you can stay in each.
There's a lot of ways to utilize this strategy. So one example would be to spend 90 days in Portugal, which is part of the Schengen area. And then you can travel to Albania, which is a non-Schengen country, and spend another 90 days out of Schengen before traveling back into a Schengen country like Croatia for another 90 days. And then finally, you can head to a non-Schengen country like Ireland for another 90 days. And this gives you basically kind of a whole year in Europe.
However, there's even a better hack that you can use called bilateral agreements that allow you to extend your stay even further. So here's how that works. You can spend 90 days in a Schengen area country, as you normally do, and then you can spend another 90 days in a country which the US has a bilateral agreement with. After that, you do as we've already talked about, and you essentially spend another 90 days in a non-Schengen country until your time is reset. Now, if you follow this strategy, you can spend up to 180 days inside the Schengen area and then another 90 out of it. That puts you at 270 days so far, so we're almost to the year. And then after that, you just simply go back to a non-Schengen country for at least 90 days, and that's your year in Europe. Then you can keep repeating this as many times as you wish, and this method also allows you to spend more time exploring Europe without overstaying your visa.
So what is a bilateral agreement? There are a few countries that have bilateral agreements with the United States that allow US passport holders to stay even longer in the Schengen area beyond the 90 to 180 day limitation.
Now, these agreements work in isolation of each country specifically and generally allow up to another 90 days in that country. However, since they are still Schengen countries, your time in the Schengen area still counts as far as regarding your ability to go back to one of the other Schengen countries that don't have one of these bilateral agreements with the US.
This makes the majority of the countries one way, meaning in order to prolong your stay in Europe via the bilateral agreement, you would need to enter these countries at the end of your regular 90 days in the Schengen area.
Now, like we mentioned before, you still need to leave the Schengen area for 90 days or go directly to another Schengen country that has a bilateral agreement with the United States. And this is before you could re-enter another Schengen country that does not have that bilateral agreement. As you can see, this can get quite complicated. So we're just going to be talking about the 4 most documented countries that have bilateral agreements with the United States in the next section.
Before we get into the next section, you can go over to our website, wanderinghartz.com, to sign up for our newsletter, or you can scan the QR code on the screen. If you want to show your appreciation or support for our project, you can do so by sharing this episode. And if this has helped you, you can support us monetarily by buying a glass of wine or a super thanks on YouTube. You can also check out our ebooks and some of our new merch that we've been working on.
However you choose to show your support, it really helps us out a ton, and it allows us to help create content like this and provide inspiration as well as helping you live a more abundant life by traveling abroad.
Now that we've gone over some of the strategies for traveling in Europe, let's go over some of the European countries and their visa schemes. So first up are the non-EU countries not part of the Schengen Area Agreement, and this is for visa-free travel for United States passport holders. The first one is Albania, and as a US passport holder, you can stay there for 1 year, and for everyone else, it's 90 days. The next one is Georgia. We also get a 1 year. The UK and Northern Ireland is 180 days per entry, and Armenia is 180 days per year as well.
So now the following non-Schengen countries allow visa-free travel for up to 90 days out of 180 days. And those are Montenegro, Serbia, North Macedonia, Kosovo, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Turkey, and Moldova.
The last visa-free travel country is Belarus, and you get 30 days if you're arriving via the Minsk International Airport. Otherwise, you need to apply for a visa. And at the time of filming, there is a level 4 travel advisory from the US State Department due to the Russia-Ukraine war.
Now, there are 2 more non-Schengen and non-EU countries, but they do require visas prior arrival. Those are Russia, where you get up to 90 days, and Azerbaijan, where you get up to 90 days, where you can also get just an e-visa. And just like Belarus, at the time of filming, those countries are also level 4 travel advisories from the US State Department.
There's also 2 EU countries that are also non-Schengen that are good options as well. And these are the Republic of Ireland. You get 90 out of 180 days. And the Republic of Cyprus. which is also 90 out of 180 days. And this is for the southern EU side of Cyprus. At the time of filming, Cyprus is on track to actually enter the Schengen area in the next few years. And one more thing to note is that the US does not recognize the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus under the Turkish control. So visit the US State Department website for further information.
So now let's talk about those countries that have bilateral agreements with the United States, allowing for US citizens to actually stay even longer in the Schengen area beyond the 90 out of 180-day limitation. Now, first up, we have Hungary. Hungary, you actually get an additional 90 days, even after any time that you spend in other Schengen countries. Now, it means you can actually get up to 180 days total in Hungary alone if you were just to go to Hungary and then stay the extra 90. Another thing to note, though, is if you're going to spend the whole time, your 180 days in Hungary, you're going to have to leave the Schengen area from Hungary. Next up is Poland. And Poland actually gives you an extra 90 days in the country of Poland, even after any other time spent in other Schengen countries as well. You can actually re-enter Poland to start another 90-day period by simply leaving the country and being out for 24 hours. And that could be to another Schengen country if you still have the time, or to a non-Schengen country as well. Now, also, there's no limit on re-entries or the number of times that you can do this over and over again with Poland. And next up, we have Latvia, where you can spend an additional 90 days in country without even having to leave Latvia. And finally, we've got the country of Denmark. And the great thing about Denmark is you get another 90 days in country. Also, it's irregardless of any other time that you've spent in other Schengen countries. It's one way though, so you kind of have to make sure that if you're entering from a third country, or even any other Schengen countries, you want to do it at the end of your stay, because you are still limited to 90 days out of 180 days in total in the country of Denmark. So here's an example of what this might look like utilizing a bilateral agreement. Let's say you stay 90 days in the Czech Republic, and then you decide to go to Hungary on day 90. You would then be able to stay in Hungary for those additional 90 days, at which point you would need to leave Hungary to go to a non-Schengen country or another Schengen country that has its own separate bilateral agreement, like Poland, where you could remain for another 90. So then if you were to travel to, say, the UK from Poland, you'd be able to spend 90 days there, still in Europe, before returning to a Schengen country, giving you 1 year in Europe. Now, if you're interested in more information, we will leave a link in the description where you can actually find a really informative Reddit thread that goes over quite a bit of this. Just be sure to do your own research and contact the country's consulates for confirmation, especially before trying out these bilateral agreements.
And now for some final tips for traveling in Europe. Many countries actually require proof of medical insurance or proof of sufficient funds upon entry. So just make sure that you check with the consulates of each country well in advance of your planned arrival.
Also remember that your first day, your last day, and any day you're transiting through the Schengen area will count towards your 90 days.
Also make sure to check your passport that it's valid for 3 months past when you're going to be leaving the Schengen area. You may be denied entry if you don't have at least 3 months' time on your passport upon entering. We would recommend ensuring that your passport is good for 6 months prior to departure from any country.
Now, with these scenarios, also be sure to plan far in advance and also make sure you have enough passport pages available too. Now, one note is that when ETIAS goes into effect sometime in 2025, you may not actually be getting any passport stamps in those Schengen countries anymore. So in that case, we definitely recommend making sure you keep really good records of any of your travels to both Schengen and non-Schengen countries, like hotel bookings, flights, bus tickets, just in case you need proof at the border check that you've actually been in these other countries in the dates that you said you were.
So we'll have links to official resources for the Schengen travel guidelines and also the ETIAS information and the Reddit thread in the description below, because we know this is kind of a lot of information to take in.
Now, if you have any thoughts or questions about full-time travel, be sure to share those. And also for practical tips on integrating full-time travel and/or slow travel into your life, be sure to sign up to our newsletter or visit our blog.
Happy wandering!
Happy wandering!